There is a kind of peace that doesn't depend on anything going right. Not the peace that arrives when the difficult thing resolves, when the waiting ends, when the person you were worried about calls and everything is fine. That peace is real, but it is borrowed. It came because conditions changed, and it will go when conditions change again. The peace the Buddhist masters spent their lives pointing toward is something different, something that exists underneath the conditions. That is present whether the day went well or went badly, whether the news was good or difficult, whether everything is resolved or nothing is. The ancient teachers called it the peace that passes understanding, not because it is mysterious or inaccessible, but because understanding is not how you get to it. Understanding is a surface activity, a mind moving across the top of experience. The peace they were pointing at is what the surface is moving across. It is here right now. It has been here through everything today, brought through the moments that were hard and the moments that were easy and the long middle stretches that were neither, through the conversations and the decisions and the transitions between the different versions of yourself that the day required. Through all of it, underneath all of it, something was steady. Tonight is an invitation to remember what that steadiness feels like. Not to achieve it, not to earn it or practice your way into it. Simply to let the noise of the day settle enough that what was always underneath becomes audible again. The stories that follow are not entertainment. They are a particular kind of technology, ancient, carefully developed over centuries of practice, for reaching the place where the peace lives. Each story approaches it from a slightly different angle. Each one opens a slightly different door into the same room. By the time the last story ends, something will have shifted. Not because you tried to shift it, because you were here, and the stories did what stories have always done, and the mind remembered what it keeps forgetting and keeps remembering again. Let your body settle completely now. Let the surface of your face relax, the small muscles around the eyes, the jaw, the forehead. Let your hands rest open if they've been closed. Take one slow breath, and as you let it go, let the day go with it. Not permanently, not forever, just for these hours. The first story is ready. Story 1. The monk who smiled at everything. In a monastery in the mountains of Korea, there was a monk who had a reputation that preceded him by several provinces. He smiled at everything. Not the performative smile of someone maintaining a spiritual persona. Not the distant, beatific smile that people sometimes wear when they are trying to appear at peace. A genuine, present, often surprising smile. The kind that arrives not because something is pleasant, but because something is true. He smiled when the rain came through the leaking roof and soaked his sleeping mat. He smiled during difficult conversations, not inappropriately, but in a way that somehow never felt dismissive of what was difficult. He smiled at his own mistakes, with the same ease with which he smiled at his successes, which made it unclear whether he experienced them as meaningfully different. New students found this either deeply inspiring or mildly unsettling, depending on what they had come to the monastery expecting. A student who had come from a tradition that emphasized seriousness as the appropriate response to practice found it unsettling. After 3 months of watching, he brought his concern to the monk directly. "I have to ask you something that may seem rude," the student said.
whispered here
Ask,
centuries ago.
said the monk, and there was the smile.
Of the night, the
Do you
rain
actually feel the
cleanses
difficulty of
the
things?
path.
When something goes wrong, when something is painful, do you actually feel it? Or is the smiling a way of not feeling it? The monk considered this question with what appeared to be genuine interest. What do you feel right now? He asked. The student was slightly caught off guard by the redirection. I feel somewhat tense, actually, concerned about whether my question was rude, uncertain about what your answer will be. And where do you feel those things? The student located them, a tightness in the chest, a slight constriction in the throat.
Rain washes the world
In my
clean
chest,
tonight.
my throat. And
It
are you
is
able to
okay
feel
to
those things
grieve,
and also,
child,
simultaneously,
but remember
notice that you
the
are alive,
warmth that
here,
remains.
in a monastery in the mountains, having a conversation that interests you, breathing air that is cool and clean? The student tried this. It was, he found, possible. The tightness was real. And also, yes, alive. Mountains, cool air, a conversation that did interest him. Yes, he said. The smile, said the monk, is what happens when both of those things are true at the same time. The difficulty is real. I feel it completely. And also, always also, the aliveness, the presence, the fact that something is happening at all, which is extraordinary when you consider the alternative. He looked at the student. I don't smile because nothing is difficult. I smile because difficulty is not the only thing that's true. There are many things true right now. The tiredness is true, perhaps. The unresolved things, the quiet worries, the background awareness of everything that is in motion in your life. Those are true. And also true. You are here, breathing, alive in a moment that will not come again, in a body that has carried you through another full day, in a darkness that is peaceful rather than threatening, listening to words that are arriving without demanding anything from you in return. Both things can be true simultaneously, the difficulty and the aliveness, the weight and the wonder that there is something here to carry it. The peace is not the absence of the first set of things. It is the presence of the second set, acknowledged alongside the first. You can hold both tonight, the tightness and the cool air, the weight and the aliveness underneath it. Rest in the both of it. Story 2. The woman who walked into the sea. There was a fishing village on the coast, where a woman was known for a practice that the villagers had long since stopped questioning. Every morning, before the day began, before the cooking, before the children woke, before the boats went out, she walked to the edge of the sea and stood in the shallow water up to her ankles, not for any formal religious reason, not as part of any tradition she had been taught. She had begun doing it after a period in her life that had been very hard, and she had never stopped, because stopping had never seemed like the right thing to do. When people asked her about it, she said something that was simple enough to sound obvious, and yet somehow wasn't. The sea doesn't care what kind of night I had. That was all. But it was, she had found, exactly what she needed at the beginning of each day. A reminder, a reorientation, the sensation of the cold water around her feet, which was present and undeniable and completely indifferent to whether she had slept well or badly, whether the previous day had been good or hard, whether she was in a mood to receive it graciously or not. The sea was the sea. Whether she came to it happy or grieving or exhausted or at peace, it received her with the same water, the same cold, the same rhythm of waves that had been running its pattern since before she was born and would continue it long after. There was something in that continuity, she said, that put her own continuity into perspective. Her problems were real. Her life was full and sometimes difficult and sometimes more than she knew how to manage. But every morning the sea reminded her that she was entering a day that was part of something vastly larger than any of it. That the patterns she was embedded in extended backward and forward in time, far beyond what she could see. That she was, in some sense she couldn't quite name but could feel in the cold water around her ankles, held. Not that nothing would go wrong, not that the day would be easy, but held. Part of something, not alone in the way that the middle of the night sometimes makes you feel alone. She never missed a morning, and on the mornings when she came to the water in her worst states, exhausted, grieving, afraid, those were the mornings she stayed longest, because those were the mornings the sea had the most to offer. You are part of something larger than tonight, larger than this day that just ended, larger than the particular shape of your life at this particular moment, larger than the concerns and the plans and the identities that constitute the self you move through the world as. The patterns you are embedded in extend back further than memory and forward further than imagination. And in this moment, in this night, in the cold water reality of simply existing and breathing and being held by whatever surface holds you, you are in contact with that largeness, not thinking about it, in contact with it, the way her feet were in contact with the sea, the way you are, right now, in contact with the night that has been running this same pattern since before any of us were here to experience it. You are held, not by anything you can name exactly, but held. Let that be enough for tonight. Story 3. The Two Students and the Candle. Two students were given the same assignment by their teacher. Spend 1 hour alone with a candle and report back what they noticed. They went separately, each to a quiet room with a single candle and an hour before them. The first student approached the assignment as he approached everything, as a problem to be solved, an experience to be extracted. He watched the candle carefully. He noted everything he could observe: the shape of the flame, the way it moved, the slight hiss it made, the smell of the wax, the way the light played on the walls. He was thorough, and he was attentive, and at the end of the hour, he had a comprehensive report. The second student sat down with the candle, and, after a few minutes of the same kind of careful observation, ran out of things to note. The candle was a candle. The flame was a flame. There was only so much to observe before the observation became repetition. So he stopped observing and simply sat. He didn't know what to do with the remaining time. He wasn't meditating exactly. He hadn't been told to meditate. He wasn't thinking about the candle in any productive way. He was simply there, with a candle, in a room, for the remaining time. At some point, he couldn't have said when, something changed. Not in the candle, not in the room, in his relationship to being there. The slight restlessness of not having a task had passed. The background noise of thoughts about other things had faded, and what remained was something he found difficult to describe, a quality of presence that felt different from normal wakefulness, more full somehow, more clear, while also being less effortful. He was, he would later say, simply there, not analyzing the being there, not performing the being there, just there. When the hour ended, he felt as if he had rested, though he hadn't slept, as if something had been restored, though nothing had been added. The next day, both students reported to the teacher. The first student gave a detailed and accurate account of everything he had observed. The second student said, "I don't know how to describe what happened. I ran out of things to observe, and then I just sat. And then something happened that I can't quite name." The teacher looked at both students for a long time. "You," he said to the first, "learned about a candle." He looked at the second. "You," he said, "learned what a candle can teach when you stop trying to learn from it. There is a version of tonight where you are the first student, observing the experience, taking notes, monitoring whether you are relaxing correctly, whether the stories are working, whether you are closer to sleep than you were. And there is a version where you are the second student who ran out of things to observe, who stopped trying to extract something from the experience, who simply stayed without agenda in the room with the candle. Both versions are available. One of them leads to a comprehensive report. The other leads to the thing the report is trying to describe. You already know which one is available to you right now, in this dark, with these stories moving through you. Stop observing. Simply be here. The candle is lit. The room is quiet. The hour belongs to you. Story 4. The Abbot and the River Stone. An abbot who had led a monastery for 30 years was known for keeping a stone on his desk. Not a remarkable stone, a smooth river stone, the kind you find anywhere near running water, grey-brown and slightly flattened, fitting comfortably in a closed hand. It had no visible markings, no special provenance, no story that visitors were ever told. Visitors invariably asked about it, and the abbot invariably gave a different answer. To a student overwhelmed by responsibilities, he would pick up the stone and hold it out. "Feel how heavy this is. Now feel how long I've been holding it. It's the same stone whether I held it for a moment or an hour, but my arm is very aware of the difference." To a student struggling with grief, he would hold the stone gently in both hands. A river spent a long time making this smooth. The smoothness isn't despite the water, it's because of it. Every difficulty that moved across this stone left it different than it found it. Not broken, smoother. To a student who couldn't let go of an old injury, he would set the stone on the table. "I set it down. It doesn't fall apart. It doesn't disappear. It's there when I need it again. But for now, my hands are free." To a student anxious about the future, he would simply hold the stone up to the light from the window. "It's been here for longer than you or I have existed, and it will be here after we're gone. We exist inside a very long story. Tonight's chapter is one page." To a student who had lost faith, he would close his fist around it. "It's still there whether I can see it or not. The same stone, a different teaching every time. not because the abbot was manufacturing lessons, but because the stone was simply itself, patient, present, complete. And what it offered was whatever the person in front of it most needed to receive. After the abbot died, the stone remained on his desk. The new abbot left it there. Visitors still asked about it. And the new abbot, who had learned a great deal from the old one, would pick it up, hold it out, and say, "What do you need it to be? What do you need this night to be? Perhaps you need it to be the water that smooths the rough places, moving over what is difficult in you with a patient consistency that doesn't fight the difficulty, but gradually, over time, makes it less sharp. Perhaps you need it to be the moment of setting something down, of placing on the floor beside you whatever you have been carrying today, and allowing your hands to be empty for a few hours. Perhaps you need it to be the long story made visible, the reminder that this particular chapter, however significant it feels right now, is one page in something vast and ongoing, and not concluded by whatever tonight holds. Perhaps you need it to be the simple proof that something solid exists even in the dark, even when you can't see it, even when everything feels uncertain. The night is the stone. It is here. It is patient. It is whatever you need it to be. Hold it. Or set it down. Either way, it will be there in the morning. Story 5. The Master of Forgetting. There was a teacher in a small village who had never attended a formal monastery and had never been given a title, but who people came from distant places to visit because of a quality she had that they found nowhere else. She forgot things, not in the way of cognitive decline or poor memory. She was sharp, present, able to recall whatever was genuinely important, but she had developed, over a long life of practice, the capacity to forget the things that did not need to be remembered. An insult from last week, forgotten. A slight from a neighbor who had said something unkind in passing, who clearly regretted it, who was now acting normally and hoping the incident had passed. Forgotten. Not forgiven as an act. There was no drama of forgiveness, no formal process, simply forgotten, in the natural way that a river forgets the stone that was dropped in it this morning. A worry that had proven groundless. Gone. A version of herself from 10 years ago that had done something she was ashamed of. Not forgotten entirely. The learning was there. But the weight of it, the carrying of the shame as a current companion, the identity of I am someone who did that, released, forgotten in the sense of no longer being held. People asked her how she did it. She said she had noticed early in her practice that most of what the mind held on to was not being held for a good reason. The mind grips, she said, because it was taught that gripping is how you keep things, that to release something is to lose it, that if you let go of the hurt, you're saying the hurt didn't happen, that if you stop carrying the shame, you're saying the thing you did was acceptable. She would look at whoever was listening. None of that is true. What happened, happened. The record is complete. The learning is intact. You can release the carrying without releasing the truth of it. The stone can be set down. The river keeps flowing. The bank keeps its shape. She paused. Most of what we carry, We carry not because it is useful to carry, but because we were never given permission to put it down. She would look at them very directly then. I'm giving you permission. There are things you are carrying tonight that could be put down. Not forever, not in a way that denies what happened or releases you from responsibility, or pretends that what is difficult isn't difficult. But for tonight, for these hours, the memory of it will be there in the morning. The learning will be intact. The record is complete. But the carrying, the active, ongoing effort of holding it all in your arms while you're trying to rest, that can stop for now. You have permission, not from some external authority, from the simple fact that you are a person in a body, in a night that is asking nothing of you except that you rest. Set it down. The floor will hold it. Your hands can be open tonight. Story 6. The gardener who planted for others. In a monastery garden, there was a section that no one in the current community had planted. The trees were too old, the arrangement too specific, the choice of species too clearly intentional to have happened by accident. Someone, at some point well before anyone currently living, had designed and planted this part of the garden. Whoever it was had known they would not see it fully grown. The trees they planted took decades to reach the size they were now. The sight lines they had arranged, the way the morning light came through the gap between two particular trees and fell exactly on a stone bench that had been placed with evident care in exactly the right position, required a knowledge of growth patterns and light trajectories that could only come from someone who had studied many gardens, not just this one. They had planted for people they would never meet, had arranged a particular quality of morning light for unknown future monks who would sit on a bench they would never sit on. Under trees, they would plant as saplings and never see as the giants they now were. A young monk who had just joined the community sat on the stone bench one morning and thought about this for a long time. He had come to the monastery, in part, because he was struggling with the feeling that what he did didn't matter. That individual actions were too small, too ephemeral, too quickly forgotten to justify the effort of doing them carefully or well. But here was evidence to the contrary. Someone had acted carefully, had done something with great intentionality, and the effects of that action were present in this morning, in this light, in the quality of the sitting he was doing right now, completely undiminished by the centuries between them. The planter was gone. The planting remained. He sat on that bench often after that morning. And sometimes, when he was in the garden, he would do small things, place a stone slightly differently, tend a plant that no one had asked him to tend, notice a place where a particular quality of light might be cultivated, with the understanding that he was planting for people he would never meet. It changed something in the quality of what he did, not the ambition of it. He wasn't trying to create great things, but the care, the sense that what he was doing now would persist in ways he couldn't fully see or control, into a future that would be different from the present, but continuous with it. That the morning light falling through those trees was not just his. It was everyone's who had ever sat there, and everyone's who ever would. That acting well, even in small things, even in things no one would attribute to you, even in things whose effects you would never witness, was worth doing, because the bench is still there, and the morning light still falls. What you do in these night hours matters in ways you cannot fully see. The rest you take, the genuine rest, the kind that is real rather than performed, it has effects that reach forward into the person you will be tomorrow, who will move through the day differently because of what tonight offered, into the people who encounter that person, who will receive something from someone who rested, who is present, who has something to give because they replenished. You are planting for the morning. You are planting for the people who will encounter you tomorrow. You are planting for the versions of yourself that will need what tonight's rest provides. Rest is not selfish. It is the tree you plant so that someone, in the light that comes through the gap, can sit on the bench and think about what it means to do something for a future you won't see. Plant it tonight. Rest is the planting. Let it be as deliberate and as careful as any garden. Story. The sound. The temple makes at night. In a temple in Japan, there was a bell that hung in a small structure just outside the main building. It was rung at specific times during the day by the monks, following the schedule of practice and meals and transitions. Those ringings were known, expected, part of the structure of the day. But there was another sound the temple made, not from the bell, from the building itself. The old wood, expanding and contracting through the day's temperature changes, would make small sounds, pops and creaks and settling sounds, the voice of old wood doing what old wood does across the long arc of time. The monks who had been there long enough had stopped hearing it. It had become part of the background, like the sound of their own breathing. But a new monk, in her first weeks, lay awake at night listening to it. She found it strange at first, then interesting. Then, over the nights, something that she couldn't quite name. Comforting wasn't quite right, though it was something in that direction. She brought it to one of the senior monks. "The building makes sounds at night," she said. "It always has," said the senior monk. "What is it?" "The wood cooling, the structure settling. It does this every night, has done it for several centuries. Is it something to be concerned about?" The senior monk looked at her. Should the wood be concerned that it cools? She thought about this. No, it's just doing what wood does. And the settling sounds are, what? Evidence that it's doing it, that the process is happening. Yes. The senior monk was quiet for a moment. The temple sounds different when the monks are asleep. Not louder, different. As if, without the movement and the voices and the activity of the day, you can hear things that were always happening, but that the daytime covered. She lay awake more deliberately after that, not with the restlessness of someone who can't sleep, but with the attention of someone listening to something worth hearing. The wood cooling, the structure settling, the quiet expansion of the night. These things had been happening in this building every night for centuries, attended to by no one, witnessed by no one, simply happening in the faithful continuation of processes that didn't need witnesses. And she was here, in the middle of it, a temporary inhabitant of a building that would continue its nightly sounds long after she was gone. There was something in that, in the contrast between the smallness of her temporary presence and the continuity of the building's ancient processes, that settled something in her. She slept well that night, and most nights after. Listen. For a moment, to what is happening around you that you haven't been listening to, not searching for something, not analyzing what you hear, just receiving it, the way you'd receive the sounds of an old temple cooling in the night. Whatever is there, the sounds of the building around you, or the sounds of outdoors if they reach you, or the sound of your own breath, which is the oldest sound in your life and which you almost never hear because it is so constant. These things were happening before you began listening. They will continue after. You are a temporary, present witness to processes that are faithful and continuous and older than any concern you will have tonight. Rest inside that continuity. The wood is cooling. The structure is settling. The night is doing what the night has always done. You can simply be here for it. Story 8. The Monk and the Unfinished Letter. A monk had been composing a letter to an old teacher for weeks. Not a long letter. It would ultimately be a single page. But a difficult one, because what he was trying to say was something he had been trying to understand for years, and the attempt to put it into words kept revealing that his understanding was less complete than he had believed. He would write a draft, read it, see that it wasn't quite right, that it captured something but missed something else, that it was true as far as it went, but that it stopped short of what he was actually trying to reach. He would set it aside and return to it days later, hoping that time would clarify. It sometimes helped, but the letter remained unfinished. One evening, the master of his monastery came across him sitting with the unfinished letter and a look on his face that combined frustration and exhaustion. "How long have you been working on this?" the master asked. "Several weeks." "And what is the obstacle?" "I can't find the right words for what I'm trying to say. Every time I think I have it, I read it back and see that something is missing, that I haven't quite." The master held out his hand. The monk gave him the most recent draft. The master read it. He read it again. Then he set it on the table between them. "This letter," he said, "contains everything you currently understand about what you're trying to say." "Yes, but I'm trying to say more than I currently understand." "I know." The master looked at him gently. "That is the wrong task." The monk waited. "The letter you're trying to write requires an understanding you don't yet have. You cannot write your way to that understanding. You have to live your way to it. The letter will become possible when the understanding is ready. Until then, every attempt to force it produces a document that contains what you know, but pretends to know more, and you are too honest to be satisfied with that. So, what do I do? Send what you have." The monk looked at the draft. "It's not finished. It is completely finished as an expression of where you are right now. Your teacher, who knows you and who has been in this place himself, will receive it as such. He will read not just the words, but the reaching, the honest attempt to say something that is not yet fully sayable. That reaching is perhaps more valuable to him than the polished certainty of something fully understood." He paused. "And perhaps," he said, "after you send it and release the project of the unfinished thing, the understanding that's been trying to arrive will find its way to you. Understanding sometimes waits at the door while we're trying to force it through the window." The monk sent the letter the next morning. And 3 weeks later, while doing something completely unrelated, the thing he had been trying to say simply arrived. Clear, obvious, complete. He wrote it in a postscript, a single sentence. His teacher wrote back that the postscript was worth the entire letter. There are unfinished things in your life tonight. Letters not yet sent. Understandings not yet arrived. Things you have been trying to resolve that are not yet resolvable because the time for resolving them has not come. This is not failure. This is the process. You cannot write your way to an understanding that requires living. You cannot force through the window what is waiting at the door. You cannot rush the ripening of something that is not yet ripe. What you can do is send what you have, which is to say, rest with what is actually true tonight, with the understanding you actually have, with the peace that is actually available, not the peace that will arrive when everything is resolved, but the peace that is here, right now, underneath the unresolved things. The letter will be completed when the understanding arrives. The understanding will arrive when you stop trying to force it. Let tonight be the sending of what you have. It is enough. It is, in fact, more honest than the version that pretends to be finished. Story 9. The Old Woman and the Sky. There was a very old woman in a village who was known for one thing above all others. She was never afraid of the dark, not just unafraid in the ordinary sense. She actively loved the dark.
In the heart of
She
the
preferred to sit
stone,
outside on clear nights
the
rather than indoors
universe
with the lamps lit.
whispers its
She had been doing this
secrets.
her entire life. It was as natural to her as breathing. When she was young, this had made her unusual. People in the village didn't sit alone outside in the dark. They found it unsettling,
Hold on to this
or they found it cold,
feeling.
or they simply found
Let
no
the
reason to do it
warmth
when the
center
interior of the house
you.
was warmer and more familiar. But she kept doing
Everything
it,
is
and
calm
over the
now.
decades, something about the steadiness of the practice, the simple, consistent choice, night after night, to go outside and sit with the sky, had given her something that people who knew her couldn't quite name but could
Embrace the
feel,
stillness of the night
a quality of
rain.
rootedness, of being at home in
Let the
herself without needing
sound
the
of the
world around her to
water
provide the
guide
comfort.
you to
When she was
tranquility.
very old, a young woman who had been recently widowed came to her asking for help with grief. The old woman listened carefully. Then she said, "Come outside with me tonight." They sat outside together in the dark. It was a clear night, and the sky was full. The old woman didn't say anything for a long time. She simply sat, with the ease of someone doing something she had done 10,000 times. Finally, the young woman said, "What are we doing?" "Sitting with the sky," said the old woman. "Why?" "Because everything I've ever been afraid of," the old woman said, "is smaller than the sky. And everything I've ever lost," she paused, "is smaller than the sky."
The stone remains
And the sky,
still,
she gestured upward,
even as the world
doesn't need me
around
to be
it
any particular way,
changes.
doesn't need me to be over my fear, or finished with my grief, or further along than I am. It receives me wherever I am. She looked at the young woman. "I don't know how to fix what you're going through. I don't think it can be fixed. But I know that if you sit with something larger than your grief often enough, the grief doesn't go away, but it finds its proper size, and finding the proper size makes it possible to carry." They sat for a long time. The young woman went home and slept better than she had since the death. not because she was done grieving, but because, for 1 hour, the grief had found its proper size. And proper size is something you can sleep with. Impossible size is not. Whatever you are carrying tonight, let it find its proper size, not minimized, not dismissed, not told that it doesn't matter, because the universe is vast and individual concerns are small, but held against something larger, seen in proportion. The sky above you right now, whether you can see it or not, whether it's clouded or clear, is doing what it always does, running its patterns, holding everything beneath it with the same indifferent patience it has always had. You are beneath it. Your life is beneath it. The things you are carrying are beneath it. And beneath the sky, in their proper size, even the heaviest things are, if not light, at least the right weight. The weight you can carry. The weight you were built to carry. Rest now in proper proportion. The sky holds everything. You only need to hold yourself. And even that, the night will help with, if you let it. Story 10. The final story. What every morning proves. There is something that happens every morning that we have stopped noticing because it happens every morning. You wake up. This is so ordinary, so utterly expected, that it carries almost no weight in how we experience it. You went to sleep. You woke up. Of course you did. That's what happens. But a monk who had been practicing for 50 years said that the most important moment of spiritual instruction he had ever received came from simply paying attention to what happens in the first moment of waking, before memory arrives, before the day's agenda assembles itself, before you remember who you are and what you have to do and what is worrying you. There is a moment, very brief, sometimes imperceptible, that is simply aware, present, here, without content, without story, without the weight of anything that was or will be, just awake, here, this. He said this moment was a glimpse of what the deepest Buddhist teachings were pointing at, not the accumulated self with its history and its plans and its worries, but the awareness underneath the self, the pure fact of being aware, before awareness becomes aware of anything in particular. Every morning, he said, proved something. It proved that the long passage of the night, those hours of apparent unconsciousness, those hours of letting go so completely that the self was temporarily absent, had been survived, had been, in some way that couldn't be described, supported, that something had continued, maintained the continuity, carried the thread of what you are from the moment of falling asleep to the moment of waking without any conscious help from you. You didn't do that. You couldn't do that. You were not available to do that. Something else did it. Call it what you will. The body's intelligence, the deeper mind, the ground of being, the Buddha nature that is not yourself and is not other than yourself. The name doesn't matter. The fact matters. Every morning proves that you can be completely released, completely given over to the dark, completely surrendered to whatever holds the continuity while you are not holding it, and be returned. Changed, always. Slightly different, always. But returned. Continuous. Yourself. This is what tonight is. The nightly proof. The regular demonstration that the dark is safe, that the release is survivable, that what you are is held by something that doesn't sleep, doesn't need your management, doesn't require your supervision. You have proven this to yourself thousands of times already. Thousands of mornings, thousands of returnings, thousands of proofs. Tonight is one more. Let the proof happen. Let the release be complete. Give the thread over to whatever holds it while you rest. It will be there in the morning. It has always been there in the morning. This is what every morning proves. You will wake up. You will find yourself on the other side of this night, in a morning that is different from tonight. Lighter, probably, or different in light. A new arrangement of the world that this particular darkness will have given way to. You will be different too, in the small ways that every night produces. And the things that feel so present and so urgent right now, they will be there if you need them, but they will be different. Slightly more in perspective, slightly more the right size. Because the night does this, the release does this, the surrender to the dark, complete and temporary does this. You wake up different, not solved, not finished, not arrived at some final piece, but renewed, slightly restored, carrying the same life, but carrying it differently, because the carrying was briefly given over to something else. This is the joy that the morning holds. Not the joy of a good day necessarily. The day will be what it will be, but the joy that is structural, built into the fact of waking after sleeping. The small miracle that is too ordinary to notice, but that is, when you actually stop and feel it, extraordinary. You were away, and you came back. You were released, and you were returned. You were, for these hours, held by something that didn't need your help to hold you. And in the morning, you will know this again. You will open your eyes into a world that is still here. And for a moment, that brief moment before the day assembles itself, you will be simply aware, simply present, simply here. And that will be enough. That is always enough. Peace tonight, and joy in the morning. Good night. The Buddhist teachers who have most helped people with sleep were not sleep specialists. They were people who had developed a profound relationship with impermanence, with the truth that everything changes, that nothing stays, that the attempt to hold any state forever, including wakefulness, is both futile and exhausting. They noticed that the resistance to sleep was not really resistance to sleep. It was resistance to impermanence. The sleeping self is, in a real sense, a different self from the waking one. The memories are continuous. The body is the same. The life is the same life. But the conscious awareness that manages and monitors and keeps track of everything, that temporarily dissolves. And something in us, something very fundamental, is reluctant to let it go. Even for a night, even knowing it will return, even knowing it has returned every night before this one. The reluctance is the resistance. The resistance is the insomnia. The insomnia is the mind saying, I will not become something different, even temporarily, even safely, even now. And the response to that, the response the teachers developed over centuries, was not an argument. Arguments don't help with this. The insomnia self is very good at arguments. The response was a story, a different kind of engagement. One that doesn't argue with the resistance, but simply goes around it. That speaks to the part of you that is not the resistant mind, the part that is older, quieter, more patient, more wise. That part has been listening tonight. That part has been slowly, quietly, doing what the resistant mind can't do by force. Letting go. You can feel it if you pay attention. Not the big dramatic letting go that the mind imagines is necessary. The small, steady, continuous letting go that has been happening in the background as the stories moved through you. The thoughts that arrived between stories and then passed because there was nothing to hold on to them. The planning that started and then stopped because the stories offered something better to do than plan. The monitoring of how close to sleep you are, which requires effort, and which the effort of listening has gradually made harder to maintain. Something has been softening, not because you forced it, because you showed up, and the stories did their work, and the ancient technology worked the way it has always worked, reaching the place beneath the resistant mind, and gently, persistently, showing it that it's safe to soften. What does peace feel like tonight? Not the peace you'll have when everything is resolved. That peace, the one that's actually available right now, in this body, in this night. Maybe it feels like a slight loosening in the chest. Maybe it feels like the breath coming a little more easily than it was an hour ago. Maybe it feels like the thoughts moving more slowly, with more space between them, with less urgency about where they're going. Maybe it feels like nothing you can name, just a quality, a temperature, a hue of the moment that is different from how it was when you began. That is the peace that doesn't depend on anything going right. That is the peace that was here before you started, and that the stories helped you find your way back to. It is yours. It has always been yours. No one gave it to you tonight. No one could give it to you. It's not the kind of thing that can be given. It was uncovered. The way a path through snow is uncovered by walking it, not created, but revealed by the act of moving through. You have been walking through tonight's stories. And here is what was underneath all along. One story deserves to be added here, at the end, because it is the shortest of all the stories, and perhaps the most complete. A student asked a very old master, "What happens when you die?" The master said, "I don't know." The student was surprised. "But you're a Zen master." "Yes," said the master, "but not a dead one." The student thought about this for a while. "Then what do you teach?" he finally asked. "If you don't know what happens at the end?" The master looked at him with an expression that was not unkind and was not evasive. "I teach what happens before the end," he said, "which is everything, which is tonight, which is this conversation, which is the breath you just took and the one you are about to take." He paused. "I teach that what happens before the end is where all of it is. The peace, the joy, the love, the practice, the rest. All of it is here, in what happens before. And the remarkable thing about what I teach, the thing that took me the longest to understand, is that knowing what happens after has nothing to do with whether you can be here, fully, in what happens before." He looked at the student. "So be here, fully, in what is happening before, in this night, in this breath, in this moment of a life that is entire and complete right now, without waiting for anything." The student went away and practiced this for many years. He never fully mastered it, but the attempting, the continuous, imperfect, necessary attempting to actually be here in what is happening before the end, gave him a life that was, by his own account, full, not solved, not finished, not without loss or confusion or difficulty, full, which is another word for peace, which is another word for joy, which is what waits in the morning, which is what is available right now, in this breath, in this darkness, in this perfectly complete and entirely sufficient moment of a life that is happening right now and nowhere else.
But peace
Be here.
amid the rain.
Peace tonight. Joy in the morning. Good night. There is nothing left to say. Only this. You are here. You have been here through all of it. Through every story and every pause between stories. Through whatever the thinking mind was doing in the background. Through the softening that has been happening quietly this whole time. You are here. And here is good. Here is, in fact, exactly right. The darkness around you is not an absence. It is a presence. The particular presence of a night that is holding you, that has been holding you, that will continue to hold you through the hours until light returns. The breath is moving. The body is settling. The mind is finding its way toward the quiet it has been looking for. You don't need to do anything else. You don't need to go anywhere. You don't need to be anyone other than exactly who you are right now. A person in the dark, breathing, alive, resting on the edge of sleep, on the edge of the profound and ordinary miracle that is a night of genuine rest. Let it take you. It's safe. It's been safe every night of your life. It's safe tonight. Peace. Joy in the morning. Good night. The word joy, the word in tonight's title, the word that belongs to mornings, deserves a moment before the night ends. Because joy, in the Buddhist sense, is not the same as happiness. Happiness, the teachers observed, is a response to conditions. It arrives when things go well and departs when things go badly. It is real. It is good. It is worth seeking. But it is dependent on circumstances, on other people, on the thousand variables of a life that are never fully under our control. Joy is something else. The Pali word the teachers used was mudita, which translates roughly as sympathetic joy or appreciative joy. But there is another word, piti, that comes closer to what we mean here, a quality of aliveness, of presence, of fundamental okayness with existence. Not because everything is good, not because nothing hurts, or nothing is hard, or nothing is lost, but because, underneath all of that, there is the fact of being here, of being, in this moment, the particular arrangement of matter and awareness and history and possibility that is you, of breathing, of being capable of experience, of being here to have this night and to move through it toward the morning that will come. The morning joy the teachers pointed at was not the joy of good news or resolved problems. It was the joy of the first moment of waking, that pure, content-free awareness that arrives before the mind assembles the day, the joy of finding yourself here again, on the other side of the dark passage, returned. This is available every morning, and it is made more available by nights of genuine rest. Because genuine rest, the kind that is real rather than managed, returns you to something, to a version of yourself that is closer to that pure, content-free awareness, less accumulated, less defended, more directly in contact with the simple, sufficient fact of being alive. Tonight is how that morning becomes possible. Tonight is the investment in tomorrow's first moment. Tonight is the planting of the morning's first breath of joy. Let the investment be complete, not partial, not halfway, not the kind of rest where part of you is still on duty, still monitoring, still available to be called back into the business of being a person who has things to manage. Complete.
Embrace the gentle
For these hours,
rain.
all of you, resting,
May your
the self that
heart
manages,
find
and the self that
true
worries,
peace.
and the self that plans, and the self that reviews, and the self that wants things to be other than they are. All of it, resting, given over to the dark that can hold it, given over to the
Listen to
night
the
that has been
rain.
holding this kind of thing for as long as people have
All
been laying
the
themselves down in it.
tension just melts away.
You are in good company. Every
I
person who
am
has ever rested was here
completely at
first,
peace now.
in this same in-between, this same dark, this same edge of sleep uncertainty. And every one of them was held. Every one of them woke. You will wake with joy in the first moment, before the day has a chance to arrive, with the breath that knows it survived the night, with the awareness that is content-free and pure and yours alone, before it becomes the awareness of a day with a shape and a schedule and a set of things that need to happen. That first moment is waiting for you. The only way to get there is through here. Rest now, all the way through, and wake in the morning into the joy that was always yours. Good night. The masters who developed these teachings were not people who had escaped from life. They were people who had gone deeper into it than most. They had experienced loss, some of them profound loss, the kind that changes the shape of everything that follows. They had experienced failure and confusion and the particular darkness that arrives when you have been practicing for years and something is still not working the way you understood it should. They had experienced illness and aging and the slow diminishment of capacities that had once seemed permanent. And through all of it, they had continued to practice, not because it solved everything, not because it made the hard things easy or the painful things painless, but because it gave them a relationship with their experience that was different from the relationship most people have. A relationship of being with what is, rather than being against it, of meeting each thing, the beautiful and the difficult, the expected and the surprising, with the same quality of attention, the same willingness to be here for it, of finding in that willingness not an escape from suffering, but a different kind of presence within it. And in that different kind of presence, the peace they kept pointing toward, not the peace of nothing going wrong, the peace of being here for whatever is going right and wrong and in between, of not needing it to be other than it is, at least for this moment, of this moment being, in its imperfection and its completeness and its utter momentariness, enough. That peace is here tonight. It was here before the first story began. It will be here when the last word ends. It is here now, in this pause, in this breath, in this particular darkness that is yours alone and also everyone's. You don't need to find it. You are in it. You have been in it all along. Rest now. The peace is already present. The joy is already prepared for morning. The night is doing its ancient work. And you are exactly where you are supposed to be. Here, in the dark, breathing, alive, at peace. Good night. there is a particular quality of silence that exists in monasteries late at night. Not just the absence of sound. The world is never entirely without sound. But a quality of the silence, a texture to it, that is different from ordinary quiet. The monks who have lived in those places for years say that the silence is something you build, not individually, together, through the accumulated practice of many people over many years, choosing quietness, choosing to be still, choosing to end the day at a certain hour and give the remaining hours to rest and to whatever the darkness offers. The silence accumulates. It deepens with time. A monastery that has been in continuous practice for centuries has a silence that is qualitatively different from a quiet building that has simply never been noisy. It is a presence rather than an absence. And people who walk into it for the first time, people who have never experienced anything like it, often say that they felt, in that silence, something they had been looking for without knowing they were looking. Rest. Not sleep, necessarily, though sleep often follows, but the thing underneath sleep. The thing that sleep is trying to reach. The basic availability of the self to the moment it's actually in, rather than the moments it's carrying from before or anticipating from ahead. You cannot build centuries of monastic silence in a single night, but you can access something of what that silence points to. Because the silence the monasteries built, the accumulated quietness of thousands of nights of genuine rest, was not created from nothing. It was uncovered, maintained, made visible by removing what covered it. The underlying silence was always there. It is always there. It is here, underneath this night, underneath this moment, underneath the thoughts that are still moving, and the worries that are still present, and the body that is still shifting toward its resting position. The silence that has always been there, waiting, as it has always waited, for the noise to thin enough that it becomes audible. It is audible now, if you listen, not with the listening that searches for something, with the listening that simply receives. The silence is here. You are in it. Rest inside it. And wake in the morning into the joy of finding yourself still here, on the other side of the dark, in a world that has continued, in a body that has rested, in a life that is yours to move through again. Peace. Joy in the morning. Good night.